Gemini 2 was the second unmanned mission of the Gemini program and the last before astronauts started flying the new spacecraft into orbit. It was a crucial mission, but really not that exciting because, again, unmanned. So why are we talking about that today on Vintage Space? Because I own a very small part of it. Gemini 2's main goal was to test the new ablative heat shield that NASA was planning to use on Apollo missions to the moon. The previous Mercury program had used a heat sink to protect astronauts from the searing heat of atmospheric re-entry, but it wasn't good enough to protect Apollo astronauts from lunar re-entry speeds. That's why there was this new re-entry technology of the heat shield. Gemini 1, the first unmanned mission of the program, hadn't tested the heat shield. It was really just a test of the launch vehicle and the spacecraft going into orbit, and then it was left to burn up in the atmosphere. Gemini 2 was the last test of all of the parts of a Gemini mission, as well as the heat shield, the first real test of that heat shield before the spacecraft would take men into orbit. So the main thing this Gemini mission had to do was expose the spacecraft to the hottest possible re-entry heat it could manage, and it did this through two ways. The heat shield was actually only half as thick as any of the production spacecraft that would take men into orbit was. That way, the spacecraft would be exposed to more heat during re-entry. It was also launched on a simple suborbital trajectory such that it would re-enter the Earth's atmosphere at 16,600 miles per hour. Gemini 2 launched on January 16th of 1965, a little after 9 a.m. The spacecraft was the same spacecraft that would carry astronauts on later missions. It was pressurized, but instead of astronauts were sort of two simulated astronauts that would do all the things a man would do in the spacecraft, only autonomously. This included sequencers, batteries, cameras, lights, instrumentation, and a timer and tape recorder. The Gemini 2 spacecraft reached a peak altitude of 106 miles on its roughly 19-minute flight, and it proved that the heat shield was man-rated. It would be able to keep the two Gemini astronauts alive during their re-entry from orbit. The very next mission, Gemini 3, was the first manned flight of the program. So what do I have of Gemini 2? I have a very small piece of the Gemini 2 heat shield. The Gemini 2 spacecraft was repurposed by the US Air Force and launched as the unmanned manned orbiting laboratory test flight. It was launched, however, with a new heat shield, the heat shield with the hole in it, which I talk about in this video here if you want to learn more about that story. The final solution was the simplest, although came with a lot of problems. Instead of having the crew transfer outside the vehicles through any means, they would transfer within the vehicles. So do you guys own any cool things that have been in space? Let me know in the comments below, and I will probably end up being really jealous because currently the Gemini 2 heat shield is the only thing I have authenticated that has been in space. Leave me any questions you have about Gemini 2, the Gemini heat shield, the Gemini program, or anything else relating to spaceflight. And of course, ideas and topics you have that you would like to see covered on future episodes. Be sure to follow me on Twitter for daily Vintage Space content, and with new episodes going up every single Friday and occasionally bonus episodes on Tuesday, subscribe right here so you never miss an episode.